Good morning and welcome to this week's Jump discussion. And this week we've got a really hot topic of debate to discuss: what tech will help recruiters build in 2024 and what tech is coming really down the line is what we should be looking at. This week I'm joined by Darren Westall, the co-founder of Pager, spent 15 years in the recruitment market, 10 years at Broadbean before starting Pager. I've got Gianni Cantina from the Access Group. Again, 10 years experience of recruitment, was originally a consultant for the Page Group, then moved into Odro and then moved on to the Access Group. So again, really in the bed of technology for recruitment. We've got our very own Tim Styles, the ex-director of IT director of Engage, to help work with us from a recruitment business point of view. So as this week we've got so much to ask, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump straight in with the questions. And then what I'm going to do is move the questions around and try and get an overall view from all the panelists from there. So Dave, if you've got anything that you want to add in, feel free to add those things in. So let's start with the first question. Many recruitment firms already have a tech stack in place, obviously. What's the most common mistakes that you see in the underutilization of existing technologies, and how can firms maximize their current roles? So I'm going to go to you first, Tim, on this, having just stepped out of a recruitment agency. Give us your understanding of the technology stack and the underutilization of those stacks.
Well, I think that's absolutely the situation that exists so often, that a recruitment business starts talking about moving to a new platform, a new CRM, new something, because it almost seems easier to implement a new system than it does actually to try and utilize or relaunch their existing system and actually take advantage of it. And I think partly that's a complete misunderstanding of the way that organizations who are looking to sell technology to recruitment businesses are watching one another as much as they're watching themselves. And that actually, if a new feature appears in one tech stack, then almost certainly it's going to appear pretty soon in another one. You know, they are following through on that. And I think businesses really struggle to recognize that the providers of their technology software are actually upgrading regularly. They're making new features available, and I think the implementation effort is so great for many businesses that they almost want to close the drawer and forget, and sort of just try and ignore any new efforts to take advantage of new facilities.
Tim, you obviously work across many technology stacks via Pager. Darren, sorry, via Pager. Talk to me about how Pager sees this as utilization of your technology stack, but obviously how you help them utilize other technology stacks as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo exactly what Tim just said. For me, the biggest issue is people buy it, they're excited, shiny toy syndrome, like we called it. They get really excited at the start, and then they probably give it to somebody internally to own, when actually there's multiple people within the business that need to retain ownership and keep refreshed. So, you know, we run quarterly reviews with our clients. We have that single champion, if you like, internally. But really what we want to do is, who was involved in the buying process at the start? Was it the sales director? Was it the IT director? Whoever it may be. And really, at least once a year, we need to get everyone back on a call to talk about, you know, what's changing the platform, what's changing your business objectives. And we've built it in so that on month 6, for example, we would offer refresher training across the business, because any good tech provider is constantly innovating, right? The best ones would always be bringing out new features to solve new challenges. But also, the recruitment market tends to flip, right? It goes between it's candidate-led, it's client-led. It's always on that pendulum. So the technology you have needs to adapt with it. And quite often we forget to go back and say, actually, my objectives have changed. This is what our challenges are now. How can you help me? And if we do that just with one single champion in the business, that's normally where it's set up for failure. We need to make sure that all the people that are involved in the buying process stay involved. And for me, it's on the tech provider to do that largely. But also, you guys need to make yourselves available for us.
Shannon, obviously from the Access Group, so you've got lots of different products going into the recruitment marketplace. So talk to me about how you see this, because this is the big question that I've been asked by lots of people today, and I've got a subsequent question that you guys haven't seen yet. That's 2 or 3 people have written into me that I want to push into after hearing your answer.
It's both Tim and Darren have hit the nail on the head. I mean, I would actually take it one step further. Like, first, you need to understand why you're looking to buy this piece of technology in the first place. Like, what is the reason for that? And I think sometimes that's forgotten 6 months, 9 months in, once maybe the implementation, like Darren's just said there, is it shiny toy syndrome, right? You're not as excited anymore. And invariably, there's going to be issues. There's going to be some bugs here and there. You forget about the reason in the first place. So I think having the champion is important, but also let's find out why we're doing this. And then we pass it on internally. So we don't just have one person. If the sales director was involved, we also need to get IT on board. And this needs to be a continual relationship all the way throughout, because new features are great, but they might not also be relevant to that business. So that's why, like, the account manager has to really understand that organization well. So I think majority of it is on the supplier, but it's also it's on the business as well. So it really has to be a partnership, Howard, to make it work.
So I'm going to give you. I'm going to pull these 3 questions together. I've got 3 different people ask me this similar sort of question, but I'm going to pull it together to see what your thoughts are. They came and sort of said that what they're sold is an intuitive system, and most people are saying that the modern systems are very intuitive and very easy to pick up. What they all said was, what's intuitive to me might not be intuitive to anybody else. And what they said was, and it was interesting, Darren, that you came out with that you do a lot of refresher training. What they're saying is that they get a very small basic piece of training at the beginning and then nothing afterwards. And the cost of training afterwards is sometimes over, a little bit extortionate for them. And the video training doesn't really help them with what they're doing. And what they're asking is, how can you, as providers, give better training to their staff so they get a better usage and better utilization out of their technology? Because that's what they feel that the issue is, that with most technology, it's great, but no one really knows how to use it. So I'm going to go back to you, Johnny, first on that one.
Yeah. So I'll put some personal experience behind that. I'm not long here at Access, so I've been learning a lot. Right, we've got a lot of products, so learning demo flows, etc. I totally I empathise with that. I think the challenge is, Howard, you get shown a system and you're shown everything from ABC all the way to X, Y, and Z. The reality is you won't use all of that from day one of using it. You might only use a small aspect of it. And then when you go to use some things, it might be 2 or 3 months in, and we all learn in different ways. We've forgotten. So it's a hard question to answer. I don't know if there is a perfect answer, because every person takes things on differently. If you can do bite-sized chunks, great. I think if your business is big enough, and this is from if your agency is large enough, because I've got an example, I won't name the business, but I know somebody who takes real ownership of it internally. So they're the champion, and they almost do some internal training with a lot of support from the supplier as well. Now, I know right away people will scream at me and go, we don't have that. We don't have the infrastructure that supports that. Totally understand. But I think you have to be honest from the get-go and find out, whether that's in the buying process or with your customer success individual, this is how we like to learn. Is this possible? Because I think sometimes it's just a case of you nod your head, and then 2 or 3 months down the line, you're not taking it in, and then you've maybe got an adoption thing brewing.
So Darren, you have your academy and your Page University. I've gone through that training course, etc. So you do quite a lot right at the start, and you say you do 6 months. How do you find the uptake then of your system? Because you actually have some sort of specialised training for your people, for your users in there. How do you find the uptake of your system, and do you find that doesn't then create a drop-off of people using the system?
Yeah, I mean, every business has its challenges. So I don't want to sit to go and we're perfect, right? But we've also put a lot of work into getting as close to perfect as we can. One of the biggest things is the product. You need to make sure the product is not only simple to use, but also it's built into their workflow. So where do they live day to day? Is it the CRM? Is it their inbox? Is it LinkedIn? You need to work out where you're going to fit into the existing workflow. Changing the recruiter's behavior is the hardest thing to do, right? So let's not try to change behaviors. Let's try to actually look and go, right, where do we fit in? How can we make them more efficient? How can we make them to want to use it? It should never be forced upon them. For me, the biggest issue actually is staff turnover, right? So actually, if you think about how often people leave a business in recruitment, you know, people, I think we all say we fell into recruitment, right? So some people fall into it and love it, some people don't. It's just the way it is. But you need to constantly bear in mind that the people that started with you a year ago, 2 years ago, might not be the same people now. So I'd always, whenever you're talking to a supplier, talk to them about what is the plan for ongoing training, what's the plan for ongoing support, what does that look like? You know, how can I get you guys into my office? How do I get you to actually be in front of the team? Because that's how they're going to respond best. And the dream, as Gianni said, is to have an L&D person, right? If you've got that, great, we can train the trainer. Doesn't always happen, hardly ever happens, right? But if we did have that, that's the dream for us. But yeah, arguably, I think it's got to be at the start of the process where you talk about what's the ongoing support look like, because you need to just accept that you will have staff turnover, right? Every business does, and the technology needs to be refreshed as part of that.
So I'm going to flip that then to you, Tim, because obviously you were IT director for 5 or 6 recruitment agencies under the Engage Group. How did you find that relationship with the tech provider to help enhance the development of the capability of the system and the usage of the systems?
Well, I think, first of all, you need to start, as ever, with the business strategy and how does the particular technology that you're bringing in work and support the business strategy. I think training and implementation has become much more difficult as we moved into more of a hybrid role. Now, it used to be that you'd have an expert, somebody would be a little bit more curious in the branch, or the office would be a little bit further ahead and would be somebody to ask. That's become more difficult. Very few printed materials now. I was just reflecting then, the first CRM system that I was involved in rolling out to an 80 branch network, their implementation team was 121 people strong. That was how seriously they took the implementation team. I doubt Gianni and Darren have ever seen 21 in an implementation team, let alone 121, however big the implementation. And it's become, you know, really challenging. And then just finally going back to the first part of your question, Howard, the word intuitive, I think, is thrown around. I think what that means is familiar. And, you know, there is a disconnect now, I think, particularly with people who expect using software to be like using the apps on their phone. They wouldn't dream of watching a video on how to use Instagram or Threads or whatever. They'd expect to just be able to download the app and start using it. And unfortunately, enterprise software, because it's trying to be all things to all types of businesses, is complex and slightly hard to use. It's not really that intuitive. And I think particularly with the people coming into recruitment nowadays, the younger generation, that's a bigger problem than it used to be.
Okay, so let's move this along then. So in your opinion then, the three of you, what are the top emerging technology trends that you believe will significantly impact the recruitment industry in 2024? And why should firms pay attention to it? And I want to push the ChatGTP to one side, because everyone's talking about ChatGTP. So what other things are coming out from an automation point of view, AI point of view, that we should be looking at? And Darren, your product seems to be moving very fast at the moment, and sort of there's lots of add-ons to your product. So what do you see coming out then that will be significantly impacting the recruitment agency market?
Yeah, I mean, if I think about what we're trying to do, we've sort of taken a 360 recruitment role and said, what parts of this can we make them either automated or more efficient at? Because what we're seeing is that recruitment will always remain a human-to-human industry, right? That's never going to change despite every technology advancements. That's the reason that we're going to stay in business, frankly, right? So if you take a 360 recruitment role and go, what bits can we actually make them more efficient at? It is writing a copy, right? Writing that sort of generative AI. But beyond that, it's also scheduling interviews, that sort of stuff. So what's all of the admin tasks that they do and how can we automate that? For me, that's what I'd be looking at across my business. Where's the biggest suck of time that actually stops them from having conversations, whether that's in person or on the phone? And that's what I'd be mapping out. So that's what would be my shopping list. We spoke about the shiny toy syndrome earlier, right? It's like walking into Tesco's when you're not hungry or without a shopping list. That's what I always see it as. People buy technology without even having a need for it. So actually break that role down internally, work out what your goals are, and then say, what can I automate? And it will be the things that actually don't involve human conversation. So for me, that's the bit you don't want to try to automate. That's where we've gone wrong. I'm seeing tools like AI SDR tools that make phone calls for you. I hate them. I absolutely hate them because actually that's the bit we should keep. So if I were looking in my business, what do I want to automate? It's anything but the conversation. If you try to automate the conversation, why do we need a recruiter to begin with, right? Let's not do that.
Okay. Gianni, from the Access Group, what's your view of that? What's coming into down the channel?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I think the people buy from people, right? It's corny, but it's so true. Like that will always remain. So if you're an agency owner, you want your consultants to speak to people, right? That's where they can help with the revenue, right? Help the P&L. So I think, as Darren said, there anything that can help with admin, because naturally, right, recruiters, salespeople, whatever you define them as, they're probably not great at the admin side of things, or they don't enjoy it. So anything that you can automate, like we've got some things here, I'm not going to pitch them, right, but essentially, right, there's tools here that will do automate things in the back end of the CRM, right, whether it's cleansing, maybe arranging interviews, whatever it might be, right, the mundane things. So then the consultants can spend more time on the phone to their customers, be it clients and candidates. I actually saw a stat the other day. I can't remember exactly. It was between 30 and 40% is only the amount of time that a salesperson actually spends closing a deal. So the remaining 60% is actually not doing their job. They're doing their job, but they're not directly affecting their billings. So I think anything we can do to help people spend more time on the tools, that's the kind of tech that's going to help.
If I looked at that then from the recruiter's side then, Tim, what does that look like from the recruiter's side? What do you think should be coming in that will help people, that will have a significant impact on the recruiter and the recruitment businesses?
I think the guys are right that automation, particularly of best practice admin type tasks, is a real opportunity for business. And in fact, those tools have been around for some considerable while. Then they're not new, but they come down to data quality, which very often organizations are very poor at understanding the impact of that on their ability to automate, and data on the system, which again, the more senior, more successful that consultants get, the more leeway they tend to be given to actually operate away from the system, which means you can't automate. So I think there's almost a vicious circle in there that again, organizations have got to start with a business strategy that says, actually, we want to incorporate best practice into our business. We want to automate where it makes sense. And I think John is very, very right that you need to, that needs to be the things that don't add value when done by a person. But to do that, you've got to have a culture that says data needs to be put on at the right time, and it needs to be put on in a structured way and with quality. Now, you can do all the sort of interview arrangement and organization and reminders that you like, But if people don't put the right date, time, location, attendees on, people will immediately think this is rubbish, and they'll stop using it.
So what we're saying then, basically, over those first three sort of questions that we've asked, is that it's all about getting the right strategy, and then it's executing that strategy, and that execution doesn't stop once the implementation has taken place. It's the strategy of the execution of how you use the system all the way through. So if we then push that into artificial intelligence and automation, which you're all talking about then, obviously that's transforming the recruitment process as it is. So can you share then specific examples then of how AI or automation has improved efficiency and outcomes in the recruitment marketplace, other than the standard ones, which is automation of emails and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone now is using AI and automation in some way or form. The AI one's an interesting one, Howard. I mean, I think some people now use it as a starting point. You know, whether it's job descriptions, interview questions, whether they use it fully, I don't know. If I was still recruiting, which I did a while ago, I'm not very creative, so I probably would use some form of AI. I wouldn't do it for outreach. I just don't think it works. You know, myself, I'm in sales, so I'm doing business development, and I don't use it for that. The only thing that I do, and again, it's not to kind of harp on the point, I do it for tasks that take time. So whether it's being able to connect with multiple people on LinkedIn, or whether it is looking at the data that I've got, so cleansing that, I think it's, again, it's saying the same thing, but it's something that can help with the admin side of things. So then I've got more free time to do what I enjoy doing, which is speaking to people or performing demos. So if that was a consultant, they've got more time to, you know, interview candidates, go out and pitch to clients. I would imagine writing job descriptions, taking job briefs is not something they enjoy as much. Making an assumption there, but that's where I would go.
From a recruiter point of view, if you think about a new recruiter, somebody that's fresh to the industry, there used to be like a big training regime, right? They need to learn, well, one, how to do BD, how to service clients, etc. But also one of the biggest things was like writing Boolean searches, right? If you think about, we had like, you want to be a Boolean ninja, you want to be a black belt in Boolean. Sounds awful, right, when you think about it. But actually now with AI, they can get a Boolean search done within a second. You know, there's lots of tools out there, including Pager, that does that. For me, that's one thing that I think we're taking for granted, that actually you can get a new recruiter finding candidates, resourcing for you pretty much on day two, if you like. Right? I think day one should be about meeting their colleagues, but day two, there's nothing stopping them from actually finding candidates, which if you go back 5 years, I think people would have said that's nonsense. It's going to take a lot longer than that.
So you're thinking that candidate marketplace. And so Tim, what have you seen coming in, you know, that has really revolutionized, you know, the recruitment game from an automation and AI point of view?
I think what we're seeing now across the board is the ability to use AI machine learning to analyze data much quicker, to start seeing information coming back about the way that candidates, clients are reacting to what the business is putting out there, when it's putting it out, the ability to search much larger data sets. I think, again, I'm going to sound like a little bit of a broken record here, but I think it then comes back to how do you change behavior in your business? If the technology is telling you that actually, for example, you know, if you don't contact a candidate who's applied to a role within 3 days, your chance of placing them drops by 50%. How are you going to take that information and change the way that your business operates on the basis of the information you've now received? And again, I think that's one of the areas that businesses struggle with, is translating the information that's coming back to them, the data, and changing behaviors in their business.
So I think you've answered the next question I was going to ask, which is all about data analytics, and that's becoming increasingly involved and crucial for the recruitment process. And the question was, how do firms leverage that data to make more informed hiring decisions and improve their recruitment strategies? So you sort of mentioned some parts of that. So Darren, what's your sort of thought on data analytics and how people are using that to leverage information?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen tools come to the market. You know, your Cube-19, you've One Up Sales, right? There's lots of tools now that allow you to bring that data together and really analyze it. And I think for the first time, the technology is now in a really good place for it. What we're missing is the person internally that drives it. For the last 6 years, 5, 6 years that Page has been going, I've been advocating for us to hire marketers much earlier. And the best marketing teams that I know have got a data person inside them. Because for me, it's either going to be owned by marketing or your technology person, but more businesses have a marketer than a technology person. So let's start there. We'll come on to why you need a CTO a little bit later on. But if you've got a marketing team right now, I would consider giving them a data person, someone that's actually going to look at the research, look at all the data you've got internally, then come up with the insights. And for me, that is a marketing role if you don't have a dedicated IT department.
Can I ask how just to add to that, because recruitment is changing so fast that we want to give time to the recruitment consultants so that they can give time to their candidates and to their salespeople. So have you noticed any recruitment companies using tech as part of the interview process? In other words, are you good at having conversations with people, and can you use tech? Because I only know of one or two that use tech as part of the interview process.
I have, yes. I'm also aware of a number of companies that have got that data analyst internally, and they are very, very data driven, and they are outperforming the market right now. I don't think that's any coincidence. They are able to do that. So I am, and they are what I consider the best in class agencies that I work with.
Yeah.
What are you seeing from the Access point of view then, Jenny?
Well, I think again, like what Tim was saying earlier, right? It's the behaviour, and it's like I suppose the company goals. It comes down to the data in the first place as well, because you're going to have bad data in there, dirty data, if you want to call it that. So there are great tools out there. You know, some of the ones have been mentioned. We've got ones as well, but it all comes down to what is actually happening in the first place. And I think Darren makes a good point there. If you've got somebody internally that can own that, you know, review it. Now, you could use automation tools to help with that, you know, put in certain variables, you know, if it's, you know, uncoded candidates or inactive ones, because that's the other thing. There's probably gems in the CRM that haven't been looked at, because a lot of recruiters, the first thing they'll do is they'll go to LinkedIn or they'll go to their job boards, but they've probably got some hidden gems sitting in the CRM. Depends how long the business has been going, could be 5, 10, 15 years. You just don't know. But again, finding that is only going to work if the data is of good ilk, which it probably won't be, but that's okay. If you've got somebody that can help with that, you know, that's where I would start. And then you can pull the numbers off the back of it.
So let's flip that question, because Darren, you mentioned they're sort of best in class. So in your experience then, what's the most common technology weak spots then in recruitment firms? And what steps can they take to address those gaps effectively?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're a marketing tool, so I'm going to say marketing, but a lot of people bought their CRM without considering marketing. Quite often it's landed on marketing's lap after the sales process has happened, which is a real shame actually, because going forward, marketing is going to be even more important to your business. So you need to make sure you've got the right automation tools that can plug in, whether that's for email marketing, whether it's for social media marketing, whatever it may be. I would just always make sure that you're bringing your marketer into that buying decision as early as possible. And if you've got that weak spot right now, I would consider what technology can I give them to plug that gap. For me, we've got brilliant marketers in this industry, right? Go back 6 years and I wouldn't be saying the same, but we've really done a good job now of embracing marketing and embracing that as a position within a recruitment business. We're hiring them much, much earlier on. It used to be when you got to around 30 heads, we saw a marketer come in. It's now more like 10 heads, which for me is absolutely fantastic. But are we giving them the right tools to be successful? I think probably not. So I would be looking at your marketing tech stack and thinking, what tools do they need to do even more? Because typically they're the lonely marketer. We run a WhatsApp group called the Lonely Marketers for a reason. one person versus 60 recruiters sometimes, right? If you're not going to support them with the tech stack or the people, you're expecting miracles. So typically, I think you're probably underinvested in marketing, whether that is people or technology, perhaps both.
So, Shane, let's look at that from a slightly different point of view, because you're obviously a CRM provider and other things from the Access Group. You must obviously see and hear, because you're talking to clients all the time when you're selling your services to clients, what they're talking about, what they see as weak spots. But you must also be able to see that from when people are using your systems, what you believe are the weak spots in your system. So what would you say are the gaps in your technology or the technology out there that you're seeing that could be bridged better?
I think there'll always be gaps in every system. No system's perfect, right? We've got some good systems. I think, again, it comes down to the business itself, right? Maybe the fit isn't there, right? And I think one thing that a lot of businesses do, and I understand why they do it, they look really, really short term. It might be monetary. It might be speed of implementing the project. I think the problem then comes 2 or 3 years in, where they're growing, they're not the same business, staff turnover, as we've mentioned, and that's where the problem might come, because the provider isn't actually a good fit anymore. No one's got a crystal ball. We can't see what the future is going to be like. But if you are starting an agency and you are going to be a 50-head business someday, there's a very, very good chance that bit of technology you've purchased, if we're talking about CRM, for example, is not going to be a good fit 2 or 3 years from now. So I think trying to just take a step back and don't just look short term, try and look medium to long term. Is this going to be a good fit for us?
So what you're saying there is, then, if I looked at it as an analogy as myself, okay, as a young lad, I'd have been better off buying a Volvo 7-seater because that's what's coming in my family, rather than buying a 2-seater.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. But however, if you're not going to have kids, that's okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're going to be a young bachelor forevermore, i.e., a one-person band recruiter, probably the system you're buying right now or the tech stack you've got will, fill your boots evermore, because you're maybe going to be a lifestyle business. But if you have plans to grow and maybe sell the business, yeah, maybe look at the Volvo.
Right. So what we're saying, it's all about that long-term strategy. And I think that's what you're alluding to as Darren as well. It's about that long-term strategy of what's coming down the line, not just what's happening today. And we talk about that a lot on these webinars, about recruiters are very eyes down, looking at what's happening today, and have a very short-term eyes up approach of what's coming down the channel. Tim, what about yourself? What are you seeing as some of the gaps? Because you've been looking at these gaps from a recruitment agency point of view. What are the gaps have you found that you've wanted to bridge constantly, or have always constantly battling against?
So, firstly, just sort of supporting what Darren was saying, I would say that businesses should really be looking now not at marketing as a team, technology as a team. They should be looking at digital, and people should be starting to think about, who is going to head up their digital team, and that's going to have marketers in it. It's going to have data resources and technology. I don't think that long term it's really feasible to see those as separate. I think one of the other pieces we're seeing here as weak spots is it's very easy for businesses to end up with a not insubstantial bill every month for all the subscriptions and licenses and things that they've got about. Everybody wants their LinkedIn license, their CRM licenses, their SaaS products coming all over the place. People are putting them on company credit cards. They're being invoiced. They're coming from all over, and actually some of those are being used as security blankets rather than being able to justify the value that's being spent on them. And so I think a continual process of reviewing those, are we getting value from them? It used to be looking at job board spend as that came up, because again, it's very easy to start spending on these, forget that that's now another subscription that's going on, and just looking to justify what we're spending. Are we spending it in the right place? If we move that spend somewhere else, would we get greater value from it?
Essentially, that what Darren said there about his best clients are those clients that are very data and marketing driven. I'll echo that. One of my most progressive clients have got a data team, a marketing team, etc. And it was interesting talking to the marketing manager, the manager of that area, who was saying we get very little recognition. And I said, okay, rather than your monthly review about what you're doing, make your monthly review and then access the system and find out what's led to placements. And she said it was really funny when they didn't know what we did. None of the sales team were in our office. Now, every month I'm going, these are all the placements that have been generated by our marketing, by our data, etc. I can't get the salespeople out of my office because they're asking for more data, more information, and helping them to create better opportunities to sell. So I think we're all on the same sort of page there, that using your data and utilizing it is really important, but it's how you then measure that to make sure that people are getting the right results. So, and I go back to Jenny on this first question then. When integrating new technology into existing recruitment processes, what are the key factors to consider to ensure a smooth transition and maximum benefit?
Yep. Okay. So I would go back to what Darren said earlier. It's highly unlikely that the recruitment business is going to change their process, right? Or the consultants are going to change the process. So there might have to be slight tweaks because obviously the workflow is going to change. You're adding something in, you're maybe taking something out. But I think if you're absolutely trying to revolutionize the way they work, it's just a recipe for disaster. Because I've been there. The minute something doesn't work or you can't log in or there's a slight challenge, they'll just go, screw this, I'm going back to what I did before. So I think if possible, it has to not affect the workflow of the recruiter as much as possible. That's not to say we try and let them do what they want and they keep these bad habits if they have them, if there's a pain that the system is solving. But I think if you're trying to totally change the way they work, it's going to be a big fail.
So let's look at you then, Dan, because you are that technology that's been added to a current tech stack more often than not. So what factors do you consider should be reviewed to make a smooth transition and to maximize the system that they're putting in?
Yeah, I mean, I love integrations, right? At Broadbean, I was their integration manager, oversaw like 7,000 integrations in my time. And the biggest thing for me is coming back to the data. You're going to map data from one system to another. So you want to make sure that you've gone through that mapping process ahead of time. It's the biggest thing that can go wrong. This part's missing now. Where did that go? Why didn't that event trigger? So you need to do the mapping process straight away before you even try to do the integration from a technical point of view. But from a recruiter behavior point of view, probably the best example I have is we check adverts for gender bias, as lots of tools do. But every other tool took the view that we're going to make it so when you're writing the job advert, we will tell you the words you need to change, right? So we're going to highlight these words to you. But actually, if you read the study from the American Psychology Association, it was only around 0.01% of job adverts that had the issue, that were strongly masculine coded. So tech providers went, right, we're going to change someone's behavior for something that's right 99.9% of the time. It doesn't make sense, right? So you've got to think about how you actually tackle these challenges when the data comes up. We took the view that let the recruiters just post the jobs onto the website. We'll check the website and then we'll tell you about any problems. So you can actually do it retrospectively rather than proactively and change the recruiter's behavior. So that's just one example where take the data and then work out how you can solve the problem rather than change the behavior if you don't have to. So really just dig into the data and think, how do I solve this problem? Ultimately, the challenge we want to solve is when you're pitching for new business, you can say, we check our adverts, make sure there's no females put off applying for them. It can be the difference between getting onto a PSL or moving from a PSL to retain in some industries, right? That's the problem you wanted to solve. That's the outcome we wanted. Did we need to change recruiter behavior to get to it? No. Yet so many people tried and ultimately failed over the years. So just think about the problem you're trying to solve and the outcome, and then work out what behavior you need to change, if any.
Tim, you're about to jump in there.
I I am. I think the first thing is whether the people are making the case internally for the spend and bringing in a new system, a replacement system, don't oversell it. I think too often people start off with the lofty stretch benefits, and particularly when you're bringing in a replacement for an existing system. Very often at the end of the implementation, you've pretty much replicated the functionality that was available in the system that you've just stopped using. I think you need to recognize that that's going to be the issue, and that you should plan for a subsequent phase that then says, now we've got the new system in, now we understand it, now we can put a phase in to actually start taking the real benefits that are available from having changed the technology. I think too often people start off very, lofty goals. Everybody gets, quite tired by the whole process. Those stretch features get lost, get turned off, or never turned on in the first place. And everybody just sort of limps over the line, and they're pretty much delivering what the previous system did. And everyone goes, well, that was pretty horrible. Let's not talk about it again.
So what you're saying there, Tim, then, and it'd be interesting to see, again, Darren and Shani's view on that. What you're saying is the new system, when implementing it, you should be looking to replicate what you've already got as the first phase, get that running so people can see what they've got, and that might be quicker and faster, easier, because the new system should be better to do that. And then the second phase should be, these are now all the bells and whistles that we can add to that to make it supercharge the system. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's a much better way to implement systems than trying to do everything in a single phase project.
So then that sort of leads very nicely into the last question, which is looking ahead. How can recruitment agencies future-proof their technology investment to stay competitive and agile, because the market's forever evolving? So, Darren, you're obviously evolving really quickly at the moment as a new tech provider. Talk to me about how you think people should future-proof their technology.
Yeah, and it's I mentioned earlier, we'll come back to the CTO. So I'm a big believer that fast forward another 5 years, and we've all invested in marketing, thumbs up, great. Then we actually need to think about how do we actually get a technical person at board level, because that technical person should oversee all the systems. But also, I don't think it's a crazy idea that in the future you will have software developers inside recruitment agencies that take your data, that actually build your own platforms, that build your own website, whatever it may be. I do see technology being such a big part of a recruitment business that actually you will have a dedicated technical person. They might work with outsourced companies, etc., but you will have a single person internally that owns your tech stack and potentially even builds it, maintains it. I think of one business, I won't name the name, but they've got a brilliant person that's pretty much built their own versions of most SaaS platforms out there. They didn't build Pager. They said they couldn't, but most of the other ones, they've literally gone, no, I've built this one myself. I've no doubt he's trying to build what we're trying to do. Right? So, but I love that, right? I left that meeting thinking, brilliant. Like, this guy, he's building tech, he's got his own developer, and he works for a recruitment business. Is it a crazy idea that in 5 years' time, we will have dev teams in a recruitment business? I don't think it is. I think it will actually change what they do quite dramatically.
I'm going to come back to that, Darren. Shani, what's your view on that?
Well, first of all, I better start selling because I'm going to be obsolete soon if that's the case. But no, in all seriousness, I agree. I think I think there's a couple of things. I think if you can get somebody internally that can own that, and the key thing for me is review it. I think you've got to review what you've got on an ongoing basis. Now, the time frame, I don't know, right? It can't be too short because that's unrealistic. It can't be too long as well because you're going to not trigger, or you're going to, etc. Right? I think you need to look at what you've got, why it was purchased in the first place. Has there been ROI off of it as well? Because the thing that always happens as well, if you've bought an auxiliary tool, it could be Pager, it could be anything, right? And you make ROI quite quick off it, but then when you come up for renewal, you maybe don't feel that kind of adulation. But the reality is that the ROI is still there. So I think if somebody's owning it, keeping track of that is going to help, for sure. But also be open to seeing what's out there, because if you're not staying ahead of the curve, you could fall behind as well. But I wouldn't just buy something because it's, the buzzword AI, for example, because everyone's talking about it. It needs to fit your business.
Before I ask Tim to finish that last question off, what you're saying there, Darren, and I'll sort of push it again back into Johnny's point there, is build your own tech stack. Are you saying that you want to bring developers in that can get into the code of, say, an Access and help develop that? Or are you talking about build an absolute state-of-the-art brand new tech stack?
I don't see you building your own CRM. I think that's always a terrible idea. I just want to put that out there. But
right, okay, that's you wanted to clear up, yeah.
The idea that Access, I'm sure you've got open APIs, right, that people can plug into. So would you go to market and find a solution, or actually, because AI is moving so quickly, and actually you can generate code pretty quickly now, and this is the worst it's going to get. We've got to remember this. The worst it's going to get is right now. So fast forward 5 years, could somebody that's really technically minded produce something that plugs into 2 systems and does what they want to do without the need to buy it? Yeah, I do think they will be able to. I think that as long as they're technically minded and they've got that ability and they've got AI to back them up, there's no reason that they can't start to build some of their own technology and start to own that internally. If they start to embrace it now, you need to find the right person. You're going to need a QA, you're going to need all these things around you. But actually, we mentioned the amount of subscriptions people have. And I'm a SaaS supplier, so I shouldn't be saying this, right? But people will start to look and go, if I hired this person, what of these subscriptions can I replace and actually bring them all together? And actually, that's my ROI. And actually, I've got someone internally that owns my tech. And that, coming from me, I do appreciate.
And that leads me into the question that always comes at that point is lots of technology stacks don't talk to each other. But what you're saying, if you've got someone in the middle of that who can create open APIs and where they can all speak to each other, then you make a cradle to grave tech stack rather than a disjointed silo of tech stacks where you've got data and information siloed all over the place that it's really hard to harvest. So what you're saying is that if you had someone that could connect everything, it'd make your tech stack far more.
Yeah, I mean, even if they haven't got an API, we're seeing robotic process automation come to market. So they can emulate a browser, they can log into a system, they can extract data. So even if they don't have an API, you will be able to plug things together. But you need somebody that's got that mindset of, I can do this, and I love tech. And right now, most recruitment businesses don't have that, right? Let's start with marketing. Let's get that one done. And then think about your tech stack.
So Tim, to finish off, that last question there, how do you future-proof your technology investment?
I would look at the concept of a centre of excellence. There are a lot of advantages to having subscription software, and one of them is that the software is updated and it's getting new features all the time. By having an idea of a centre of excellence, you are continually tracking not just what's changing in the software, what features are being released, but also looking for use cases within the business on how you can actually take advantage of those, bring in automations, connect things together, take advantage of the data.
So what we're all saying then, basically, to sort of round this up, is that obviously tech is here to stay and tech is going to advance, but we've got to get better at training our tech and implementing our tech in stages rather than in one big chunk. And what we've got better is using the data that comes out of our tech so we can market ourselves, and therefore we need to be able to connect our tech together and enhance our process by harvesting tech from other areas if we've got that capability.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good summary.
There you go. I knew I was here for something, but there you go. Not just asking questions. But that's great. Johnny, Darren, absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. It's really interesting to hear what's happening and hear what people can start to move and change around in their tech stacks. Tim, thank you very much as always for your input from there. For those next week, we've got a really interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how many people turn up to this webinar on cybersecurity. Tim already knows it because he's been working on one of our clients who's had a cybersecurity issue, which has cost him a lot of time and a lot of money, etc. And it's happening more and more because more recruitment agencies are being focused on by the scammers, etc., etc. So we're having a whole session next week on cybersecurity. So Darren, Janet, thank you very much. Dave, thanks for your input. Tim, thanks for your input. And we'll see you all next week. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye-bye.